Hi everyone, Simon Chapple here. I hope you're doing great. I'm joined by the awesome Kate from Love Sober today, and we're going to talk about how to tell people you don't drink and who to tell you don't drink. Thanks for coming on, Kate.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's brilliant.
It's awesome to see you. And I must admit, you and Mandy at Love Sober were a massive part of my own sober journey. I remember listening to you in the gym on the exercise bike and the treadmill and thinking, like, how have you guys done this? You know, this was before I even quit. And you were like my staple in the gym. And, you know, you did so much to help me get to that place where I wanted to be. So thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you. We're all doing amazing work, you know.
Well, you helped inspire my change, so yeah, it means a lot. And if you guys don't listen to the Love Sober podcast or some of the other stuff that Kate and Mandy do, definitely check it out because it's absolutely awesome. It really inspired me. I used to look up to you two, like, well, I still do actually, but like you were sort of superheroes in terms of, you know, you'd been sober for so long, and you know, you've both been in a place that felt like exactly where I was, yet you had made this change. And I was like, how did they do this? How? But I found so much of what you talked about really relatable to my own story, and it just made a massive difference. So, and you continue to inspire me to this day, because recently we were talking on a live session about telling people when you don't drink, and actually having a bit of a tactic to use for that, which really stuck in my head. And I thought, I wish I'd known that when I quit. And we were going to talk a bit about that today. So in terms of telling people when you don't drink, like, what advice do you give to people? Is there a right time, or
it's one of these subjects, and Mandy and I, we tried to record a podcast on this about 6 times, and we called it the Expanding Social Circle. And honestly, if you talk to her, it's like we just have redone it so many times. And then we came across this system, and I think it came from Rose. It was Rose Romain, who's another She Recovers coach, and she's in Paris. She's lovely, and she came up with this traffic light system. And it was just one of those things where you think, why didn't I think of this before? And this might have saved me a lot of heartache.
Yeah, that's what I thought when you told me it.
Oh, yeah, right. So, and I think that the sort of, if you rewind it a bit, I think you forget, like, so now we've gone on a few years. It's like, I remember we had a joke about, well, don't get me started, because I'm that unfortunate person will ask me and then get the whole story. But at the beginning, it can often feel like we can feel quite vulnerable, can't we? And a bit wobbly, and we don't want to be put under the spotlight so much or called out, because we might be feeling a bit weird. But at the same time, we need support. We genuinely need support from the right people. So this is a little bit, by using a traffic light system, it was about kind of separating out almost like the expanding social circle, and who's kind of a good person to tell, who's not a good person to tell, and who you might tell more to and who you might tell less to. So quite simply, it was like, so red, amber, green. I'll go backwards. So green, hopefully we all have some people in our lives who are like our people, I call them our A-team, you know, those people who have got our back, and it could be our partner. It could be, you know, at this point, you're growing your sober community and your people that get it, you know, and that's the thing. So your green light people are like, okay, I know that I can get on that forum and I can go, I can send up a flare, I can talk it through with, it could be your sober coach. And, you know, hopefully you might have a few people, you know, best friends and stuff, like I said, partners, it could be someone in your family that, you know, that you could tell. Okay, so those are our green people. The amber people, they might be people as well from maybe our family and our friendship groups, who they probably won't get it, but they have your back enough to usually get it. So I think, you know, when I think about some of my friends who are like, you know, they'd let me go on for a bit and witter on for a bit, and they might not, but they'd be like, you know what, that's your stuff and we love you. So if it's an issue for you, then fine, you know. And it's the same with my mum. My mum was flashing red at certain points, especially when we went to Rome together and she wouldn't stop drinking red wine. That's another story for another time. And then the red people are like, unfortunately, I think when you start, there are quite a few of those, partly because we're sort of trying to navigate our social group. We might be disengaging from certain activities, obviously the drinking crowds and stuff that we might have thought were our crowd for a really long time. And those, you know, there's always that one person, that one really nosy person who's like, you say something to, like, you might just go, oh, well, I just drank, you know, you find yourself going, oh, well, I was just drinking a bit too much. And they're like, right, dive right in there.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Why do you think it was a bit of a problem then? Really, really? So, oh, well, why is that? Or would you suffer from mental health issues?
Yeah, are you an alcoholic?
Something like that. Oh, and then, yeah, the obvious one. Oh, well, really, were you an alcoholic then? So really, that traffic light system, I guess, is to really put the brakes on the red ones, mostly, isn't it, first and foremost?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I told you, I've had my green light on for my entire life. And until you said that, which was only a week ago, which is why I'm now doing a video about it, I've spoken to a bunch of people who've all said to me, nearly all said the same thing. Wow, yeah, I've gone through my whole life with that green light on. I've never really thought about that. And I don't just mean with not drinking, with everything. I wear my heart on my sleeve and I share stuff. And it's so true that if we've got this traffic light system in place, we can be selective, and it's actually being caring to yourself and being kind to yourself, not giving all this information out and, you know, divulging to everyone.
Right. Yeah, and I think that it's so true, that sort of having that green light on. And I think partly that is, if we've used alcohol for a lot of years, we've often been using it for social cues. Like we've masked some of our messaging around, actually, I feel uncomfortable here. So rather than sometimes going, well, no, actually, there's a reason for that. That person's a bit of a knob. You know, we'll have been drinking alongside them, won't we? And so actually, I think it's a bit of a learning process for us to understand essentially boundaries, right? And and go, oh, right, that's useful information. You know, that feeling might mean that that's not the best person to tell X to, like those people who ripped you off or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, when I had a business, you know, I told someone far too much information, left myself open and there to be exploited because I was too trusting, and ended up losing a bunch of money over it. If I'd had the traffic light system back then, I'd be a richer man, or a rich man, you know. Well, that'd be nice. Totally. But you know, you live and learn, don't you? But what did I do at the time? I just drank more wine to commiserate.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
And I think that you know, I do think that sort of, it's a growing process, isn't it? And I'm a real firm believer in, you know, you don't owe anyone your story as well, you know. And so it's, I think that I was also a bit of an oversharer many times, and that comes from that sort of awkwardness of kind of talking to fill up the gaps, or feeling like I've got to somehow be the party. And gradually I think, you know, to get that, it's all right to have that traffic system, you know. It's really useful. You don't have to be the one filling up the gaps. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You can be silent and let them dwell on the question, and then save all the good juice for the green people, you know, that are your tribe, that have got your back, you know. And that is a good life skill.
Right, and they're the people that matter as well, that really matter. You know, someone you've just met at a party, do they really need to know the ins and outs of your entire life? Maybe trauma that went on in the past, mental health issues. Yeah, I found myself telling people anything and everything. So, and I suppose that actually covers both the things that we wanted to get across in this video, which is how to tell people and who to tell. Because I suppose the how-to is actually within the traffic light system, because I suppose we could go into that in a little bit more detail, but my take on it is if it's a red light, you would just say something like, I don't drink, or I'm not drinking tonight. Yeah. Is that what you would do? Yeah,
and I think for me in the earlier days, I did use the antibiotics card with the mum, you know, with the other mums, because that was very well. And interestingly, I don't see any of them anymore. So they clearly weren't my people, but that was a lot of pressure. So just, you know, you can use that. I'm just doing dry January. I'm on antibiotics. I think the mental health conversation has opened up, and I think it's easier for maybe for women to some, like I have said to the odd person, you won't know now, because I'm sort of, I don't care what people think so much at all, in fact. And I'm like, okay, give me a bit of a soapbox. But you know, that sort of, people seem to understand that it makes you feel shit the next day and anxious. So, you know, you could have something the next day. So you can use all the kind of smoke screen and decide for you. Some people really don't like to feel like they're telling white lies. You know, you'll find something in accordance with your own values. And if you, but you know, that's up to you, isn't it?
Exactly. And you know, another good one is, say you're driving and actually drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then you're not lying. But
yeah,
which
exactly.
I've said I used a few kind of white lies at the start, and then I only did it a couple of times, and then I just moved on to actually I'm just going to tell everyone everything. I'll be proud of what my choice that I'm making. And that was when the green light was well and truly on. And then
it went from red to green.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't test out the amber.
Yeah, exactly. And so I suppose the amber one's the interesting one of what you would say, because I can think of a couple of people who are definitely amber, where I would want to maybe tell them more or trust them a bit, but probably I shouldn't have told them everything. Like, how might you?
Again, that is interesting, and it's almost like that grey area, isn't it? That always, it's like, you know, I'm a firm believer, especially in the early days, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no, because that self-protection is so important. You don't want to get knocked off by someone, and you don't want to feel like you've laid yourself vulnerable, because I think that, you know, the early days, there's a lot of hard work going on, isn't there? And you're wanting to, I believe very strongly in protection. So so like you say, Simon, so the red and the green are almost the easier ones. Maybe with the amber ones, it's, you know, when you have those, sometimes action is the best thing, isn't it, to have a bit of confidence building. So maybe if you judge it by how you feel as well. And maybe if you're having a really good confident day, you might test it on one of those people. And if you're feeling quiet, more vulnerable, introverted or whatever, so maybe that's, oh, and the other thing that I was going to say is Millie had a really good add-on to this. She said, rather than just seeing red, amber and green people, she had the way they said it could be red, amber and green. So if someone was like, had a kind of a caring thing about, oh, like, so yeah, right. Or sometimes people feel like they really want to talk about it because they have a similar issue, and they're quite, and you can kind of judge those nuances, can't you? Of just like, actually, you're saying this in a really nice way, so maybe we'll have that chat, or maybe we'll set apart, say, you know what, I'd love to talk to you about this, maybe not now, but why don't we have a coffee if you ever want to chat to me about it? So maybe you can set the scene, you know, around some of those maybe amber ones, and also look out for cues that they might be saying it in a certain way.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually, because and then you'll get on the flip side. I think some people, you know, when you mention sobriety, not drinking, there's a friend of mine was, you know, really, quite a good friend actually, and she called, you know, I got called boring, told it wouldn't last, that kind of thing. And it was clear that it had made her take a look in the mirror at her own drinking. And maybe she thought she was going to lose a drinking buddy as well. And she, you know, it probably stung a bit. She thought, well, hang on, if he's not drinking, are we still going to be friends? And yeah, that was quite tough. But she subsequently quit drinking and reached out to me. So she's kind of gone from what would have been a red, even though I told her everything. She probably should have been a red, but she's now definitely a green. So people can change as well.
They can, and I think that's interesting, because that leads back to the sort of next point, which is it's always about the other person.
See, another thing that comes up quite a lot alongside telling people who to tell, how to tell them, is people become fearful and anxious, especially now when we're in the middle of this pandemic, about events that are coming up, and worrying, telling themselves stories about what's going to happen. And I know we've sort of talked about a bunch of tactics for social events, but your story, see, once again, it resonated so much with me in terms of how I truly believed that I loved going to house parties. I loved going to the pub with a big group of people. And actually, I only really realized it when I started listening more closely to what you were saying, that I didn't love those things at all. I just used alcohol to get through them. I hated it. I'd much rather just sit home with my wife and my son and, read a book or do something on my website or whatever. For you, is that how you were? Did you sort of used to go to those sort of things and then you had this realization? Because people talk to me about it all the time, like they're worrying about it. And I'm actually thinking, do you actually like this stuff?
And I think, two things there, that I think I definitely used alcohol to shoehorn myself into events that I didn't want to go to, and for longer than I wanted to be at them for.
Yeah.
And I think that's really common. And I think we do that all the time. And I used to then think there was something wrong with me, because I just thought that was normal. I thought people enjoyed going out, people enjoyed chatting to each other, all the anxiety, the kind of, the tiredness the next day, the kind of nerves before. I just thought there was something wrong with me. I just had no idea. And the other thing that I realized was that, so from getting sober, I realized that you have choice, and that social is to be with people. And it didn't look like that face-to-face, yada yada, chatting, house party, blah, 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 that I find really draining, or the pub, blah, 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 face, I think really talking is quite boring after about, I love, this is my favorite subject, so I could talk about it.
Yeah, I could do this all day, yeah.
But unless it's that sort of very kind of, something that I'm really interested in, I do find it very boring.
Yeah, so do I.
Kind of social, being alongside people. So, and going out for brunch. I reclaimed the lunch, and that's really great because it's shorter and I don't get drained. And also, like I said, I love doing the old musical theatre, because if I'm working on a project for people, that doesn't drain me, like the whole having to concentrate and look and listen and respond appropriately and not yawn. And
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. I never yawned, but I often would find someone talking to me and I'm either looking over their shoulder or, a bit like a fuzzy TV, just, not really fully connected or interested. And often if someone sort of introduces themselves to me and they're, it's not really something I'm interested in. There's not in all cases, because if it's sort of sober related, I'm totally interested, but just in a general setting or in like a party or something like that, in my head I can hear it going, oh my god, here we go again, I've got to tell the life story, I'm gonna have to say I'm sober, blah blah blah, why am I here, that sort of thing. It's draining, it totally is. And then I started wondering how many people actually don't like that stuff, and it's just another form of conditioning that parties equal fun, pub equals fun. It makes you wonder.
And I do. I think that I absolutely believe in that. And one of the things I absolutely love about being sober is that feeling that you get to choose, and also you get the confidence to say no as your boundaries kind of sharpen up, as you get better at using things like the traffic light system, about going, actually that feeling means that, because at the beginning I didn't know whether to stay in or go out. I knew that I felt uncomfortable, but I wasn't sure whether it was a push forward moment or a protect moment. And so I do think that's why the red light is very useful in the early days of just protect, and then you get a bit better, and then you can test things out, and You know, that's what I would say. Some people just kind of go for it, don't they? I've got some friends, I've got a brilliant friend called Chrissy, who she in a way paved the way for me to come out on Facebook, and she got sober a long time after I did. And she was just like, oh, I'm out. I'm just completely out. And that really suited her because she was quite gobby. So, you know, it's up to you really and what fits your personality. But I would say, you know, protect first.
Yeah.
And then, because you can edge your way out, don't you? And you find your people. I think that's the other thing, is that all of this takes a bit of time and to have patience, because that alcohol was a very quick fix for a lot of it, a sledgehammer for all kinds of messaging and information and pacing and, you know, so all of this takes a little bit of time. So
that's so true. And again, wise words. Like I did what Chrissy did. I plastered it all over Facebook about 2 weeks after I quit. I thought I'd found this key to happiness and everybody would want to know. They'd all be thrilled like I was. But I think I sounded like some sort of preacher, and most people were supportive. A lot of people were indifferent and a few people weren't supportive at all. So I think the biggest thing is that starting with your smallest circle of trust and just growing it from there, using the traffic light system and using that through your life as well, with who you tell what, is so important.
Yeah, I definitely gave too much of myself away, definitely, in all sorts of areas. And I see that a lot on sober forums and the women that I work with, you know, that I coach. It's a very, you know, that people pleasing side of people who maybe that traffic light system is really helpful in terms of starting to look at boundary work, you know.
And I think and you're absolutely right, because I would definitely consider that I was very much a people pleaser from the jobs I'd had when I was younger. It was all about providing a service and doing what's best. And if I wasn't already a people pleaser, that kind of groomed me into one. And, you know, saying no, I've always had issues with even the slightest bit of confrontation or anything like that. I'll run away from it and try and end it, please the person, rather than sort of stand up for myself. But I've found so much power in being able to say no to certain things. My sobriety has to come first, and I can do that from a place where I'm more mentally resilient, grounded, and just sort of generally internally tougher and able to do that now.
I agree. And it is like those things that you don't necessarily know. It's like those unexpected fruits that come, aren't they? I was like, oh, I didn't realise I was that unconfident till I realised what confidence and that inner strength.
Yeah.
It all starts with those things that, like we're talking about now, it starts with that decision, which I think that thing about saying no, your first red light and your most important red light is no to alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we can, you know, spread out from that.
And you can even use it for events as well. You know, if you feel an event is going to be a threat to your sobriety, red light all the way. And whereas if it's a kind of healthy activity where you're going to be connected and fully engaged, then it's green light, big time. So someone in one of my groups put a post on yesterday and was asking me about talking to his 17-year-old son, and it just leads me to a question that's quite a good one to sort of finish with. So I was the first people I told was my wife, swiftly followed by my teenage son, who wasn't a teenager, he was 12 at the time. Who were the first people you told? Maybe the first 2 or 3?
So the first people I told were complete strangers and soberistas.
Was it?
So I was on I logged on, I found myself Googling, you know, that am I an alcoholic, like kind of 3 a.m. This is like back in 2013. And for the first time ever, I found a website that didn't scare the living, you know, out of me. And so I blogged for the first time ever. So, you know, went in and just sort of explained I was a mum of 2 and that I was really scared and that told a bit. And then I woke up in the morning with the kind of all the anxiety, and I had 6 responses just going, don't worry, we get you, we've been there. and that was it. I was glued. So
Perfect.
for the first 3-4 weeks, I didn't tell any other. I was just there, and then I was like, I think I said this on soap sessions, I was like, I'm gonna have to tell my husband because he's gonna think I'm having an affair.
Yeah,
So
I
was
remember
like,
you saying that. Yeah.
so then my husband was the second person.
So he was probably more relieved than anything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if I told him straight away, he'd be like, damn. And then he was like, oh, thank God she's not having an affair. Right, I can cope with the alcohol.
Yeah, anything else is fine.
Yeah. And I can't even remember who the third one was. I really can't. I mean, I gradually worked my way through my friendship groups, but I very much lent on the sober support, that sober forum.
Yeah, they can be awesome. What about your kids? When did you tell them, and how did you tell them?
Because mine are much younger. So at that point, my son was 6 and my daughter was only 3. So I don't think I've ever sat them down and told them the story. They just know I don't drink because they were younger.
See, that's really awesome to hear, because I'm forever offering advice around talking to older kids, and actually that's a missing piece of the sort of jigsaw, because people probably listen to some of this stuff. Well, hang on, yeah, my kids are like under 10. What do I do? And yeah, I think you're right in that approach. It's like, well, mum just doesn't drink. It's not a big deal. So
I've ended up talking to my son a bit more about it, just because he's neurodiverse, and so he sought out. He. This is another topic for another. This really is another topic for the day. But basically, he's dabbled, and when I was talking to him about why he shouldn't, i.e., you were 11, this and this, I was able to say, look, one of the reasons that I am sober is a mental health piece, and I have anxiety and you have anxiety, and for that, like, the way you feel now is because of this and this, and we looked at it very sort of medically and through a mental health lens. So that was my own personal story, but most people, yeah, I think it's lovely to. I remember this is just to sort of tie up in a nice way, is about 3 years ago we went on a family holiday in Devon, and it was just this pouring rain, even though it was summer, and we were in this farmhouse and we were playing Scrabble, or we were playing charades or something, and the clue was, and my son said, this is mum's favourite drink. And I just and it was, the answer was tea.
Oh, brilliant.
I loved it. And it was like, that's it, forward wind it, but backward wind it a few years, and that was not the case at all. But I'm forever grateful, for my little one saying that. It's beautiful.
That sent a tingle up my spine. I love that. I really love it. And the best thing of all is you remember there's joy in those little moments after you've quit, that there would, when you were drinking, those little, obviously that wouldn't have been relevant, but those little things, it sucks the joy out of even like playing Scrabble with the kids, and it just.
Oh yeah, I'd be waiting for them to go to bed so that I could nip out for a fag or something. It was, it definitely opens up all of that. No, don't get me wrong, you still want your own time as a parent, but it definitely has a different quality to it, and I have more patience, definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's joy in things, and we've all got our smiles back, which is wonderful. Kate, thank you so much. I think that's some awesome advice, and it's lovely having you on. And perhaps we can do another one and talk about some of the other areas that we should.
I think that would be amazing. I'd love to. I think that those could be some really interesting conversations. Thank you so much.
It's awesome. Thanks, Kate.
Today.